right. Well, today is a magical day. We got a real podcaster, not me, the other guy, Matthew Zachary here on Planetary Health First, Mars Next, and the man in black today. He chose to wear black, not his Robert Graham signature. So I feel like you're not bombarded by Robert Grahams today. So this is Ask Matthew Anything. Wow. So it's all on me. So what do I ask Matthew anything? All right. So where do we start?
Is that the first question?
Yeah.
I'm asking me anything. Where do we start?
Yeah. Where do we start? That's a question.
When did we meet?
In person.
When was the first time we were made aware of each other?
That's, I think, probably COVID during the clubhouse days and somehow, but in person is sadly to think that it was 2024 at Vive where I finally shook your hand, which is really bad. I need to get out of the house more, I guess.
Yeah. Well, real world is always a better place to meet than virtual world.
Totally agree. All right. So you still didn't answer the question. Where do we start here? I guess you did. All right. So where do we meet? We met at Vive.
There you go.
All right. So
what did you know about me before you met me?
I knew that. Well, this is hard because memories, like, I know you're a pianist. I know you're a cancer survivor. I know you have 2 kids. So before that, I mean, I know you had a podcast. I know you do a lot of speaking, and you've been you have a lot of different things going on too. So I think I know less about you as I'm following up with you, because it seems like you're constantly evolving, which I think is really great. I think the greatest people of all times or companies are trying to continually to push the wheel and reinvent. So that's where I'll stop at that.
I approve this message. It's pretty good.
Well, what do you know about me?
Only what I read on LinkedIn and our little chat and our podcast-ish thing at Vive. But I know people know who you are, so you're a big deal.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm still trying to figure out what I'm doing.
Aren't we all? I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. So there you go.
So do you still practice the piano?
Yeah. You can't see it, but I got one over here.
And what do you play?
I write my own music these days. I was trained in classical, jazz, American, Broadway theater, and ethnomusicology. But I kind of settle on just writing my own stuff. I do a mean like Billy Joel karaoke with the right bourbon at a conference, but I mostly play my own stuff.
So you can sing?
No, you don't want me to sing or dance. I'm a one-trick pony. I play piano.
And at this point, when you create your music, are you putting it out there? Or are you keeping it?
No, it's all private. It's all private.
And what do you is it therapeutic? What tell me about it? It seems music seems like the best thing one can do for the soul.
Well, I was born a musician. It's in my blood. It's the core of everything that I do. It was the first thing I kind of took to as a kid. And it was all that really mattered to me. I immersed myself. I'm a musicologist. I'm an effete music snob, a film composer, just audiophile. That's been my whole life. Music, all different kinds, every genre, every hundreds of years of music and sound. It's in my DNA. It's the core of who I am.
So would you say that is a big aspect of what kind of motivates and moves you?
Honestly, it's the artist's plight. You're always seeking attention. You want applause. You need validation, but you need to express yourself, and you tend to not want to follow anyone's rules.
So what kind of music are you composing right now? I
mentioned I was trained in every genre. So when I write music, it's really just a mix of everything, mostly solo piano music in multiple genres, combination of Broadway, jazz, classical, new age. It's just a nice little blend.
Who's your favorite classical composer?
Holst, Probably Holst or Gershwin. Actually, they weren't classical. I take it back. I mean, you're asking any composer or classical?
I guess classical too. I mean, I was thinking more like, forgive me. I mean, I'm not, versed other than like Bach, Mozart, and some of those other ones, but um, more.
I mean, you can't beat Mozart, but I'm a Chopin. I'd have to pick if I were looking at songs that I cling to a little more. But Mozart, Chopin, Schumann. I mean, Brahms was sort of pre-classical Baroque, but I'm not a Baroque kind of guy. So there you go.
How about Litz?
Liszt is romantic. He's post-romantic. The Rhapsodies, those are all 1800s. I'm talking, like classical is really more 1700s.
And so, was it true that he was like a rock star at the time? Didn't he have like huge hands and he went around and just was like able to do some amazing things on the like? I mean, he was like a real like rock star. Went around and toured, and I heard that. Maybe I'm wrong.
I haven't swam in that pool in a very long time. I do know that his music, many of his writings required to have very long distances between your pinky and your thumb that I don't have, and I could never do the reach.
Mm-hmm. So, healthcare. Where are we going with healthcare from a patient? Do we not talk about that? Ask Matthew anything.
Yeah, yeah. It's just like I'm gonna have my little. Where do we go? Healthcare is terrible. It's a store that no one asks to shop in, that someone runs, that only cares about profits.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an antediluvian way of thinking about caring for your voters. But this is America, and that's how it works.
Yeah, I love your analogy. It's a store where you're stuck in it and you don't want anything in there, nor do you want the prices, nor do you know how you got in there. Right. And you don't know where the exit or the entrance is.
Right.
It's like prison almost.
Yes, it's prison.
Oh my God. I loved how you got that started. Now we're getting into the meat of it. 7 minutes in, we're getting there, guys. So awesome. I love it. Oh! All right. So
settle down.
So what about consumer health? I took out the word healthcare. I'm doing reimagine health together. And anyway, just as the way I figure, because I'm kind of trying to, I'm not doing statins. My doc wants me on statins. I'm doing more keto, and God knows I'm going to find out what my lipids are. And I also will do disclaimers. I'll put a disclaimer here because I'm not a doctor, nor are you. We're not recommending treatment plans, but I worry about what the advice is by that 15-minute experience. And I had to fire my doctor, and he's a great guy, but there's just not enough talk about, I think, what really matters. And there's just too much knee-jerk prescribe. And so specifically with statins, and I would imagine the outcome for me, if I lost 10 pounds, would probably be way better than whether I was on a Lipitor. And I'll stop there.
Well, I mean, consumer health for me isn't that. Consumer health is you walk into Walgreens and you want to get like an elbow brace, right? You're talking more like primary care nonsense for like low normal generic prescriptions, because that's a different planet. You have a little more control over those situations because you're choosing to do those things. I come from a world where you don't choose to enter the healthcare system. You do everything you can to not enter the healthcare system, and you're facing chronic illness or catastrophic disease or rare situations or oncology care. That's the store you don't want to shop in. Consumer health for me is you want to buy a smart fridge so it can track whether your milk's going bad, right? That's kind of you can choose that. You scan the barcode of the milk when it goes in, it goes back to the cloud. It knows who made the milk, when the expiration it is, and the fridge just tells you your milk's gone bad. That's a nice way to avoid getting lactose diarrhea all day. When your fridge tells you the milk went bad, you don't have to open it and sniff it and pass out. That's a good problem to have, because you can consciously go out and look for things that you want that'll help you, in a sense, prevent crap from happening. Healthcare isn't that. Healthcare is you need to make decisions that you are not prepared to make because you don't know what your opportunities are and your options are. Of course, there's no Abe Simpson in a robe greeting you at the store saying, "Welcome to Shit Happens. Aisle 7, shelf 4 is what you need." That's the difference in my mind between consumer and then primary care, which is break fix, measles, whatever the hell it is. And then shit happens healthcare.
Yeah, and I agree with you, but I disagree. I mean, I think we you're absolutely right. No one chooses when they're going to have a heart attack. No one chooses when they're going to have cancer or whatever. God knows, and then have to figure it out. But the system right now to have autonomy to figure out what's the best statin. I mean, I really, or how to go about preventing metabolic disease before you get diabetes, before you get all those cardiovascular, to get the right thing out there is problematic with individuals that want to have. I do really think people want to be engaged with their health regardless. And there's not a lot of, I mean, to print out like from the printer, black and white, and give to a patient and think that that's going to change behavior and that's acceptable. Granted, I can go to another doctor. I don't want to, make this a similar, it is different, but we have a problem in healthcare that it is an antiquated model to how we do it. And I think we need to have, I do think consumer health can help all these things because it's decision making. It's giving people the right amount of information, but right now it isn't there for anything, seems like.
Well, statins have been on the market for decades now, so consumers have the opportunity to know where to go, what to look. It's not an unfamiliar territory for lots of people that either are or are not at risk genetically or because they're still eating McDonald's every day. So yeah, people can have a choice of what they're doing now, but statins are and are not a solution to all of life's problems. You shouldn't need them, but sometimes you have to have them. Knowing which one is best for you is a conversation that people know to have with their doctor. But then you're talking about how you're at the mercy of that doctor or that office or that incentive or that health system. What is their priority to get script lift from? What is your insurance going to say that you can do? Should you be on a generic or a new one? Does brand matter? What company makes the generic? And to that extent, you have to be dependent on a combination of your own moxie and whether you believe that that doctor is talking to you specifically or following a script.
Yeah. And I would argue, is statins part of that treatment as well? I mean, with all fairness, I've talked to a lot of people, they're doing, and these are really respected people. One was a doctor that went on a supplement, versus statins. And so I'm not trying to spread misinformation, but there's some problems about what I would say that they just get through, and it might not be a necessary treatment plan. And so some of these things like that is like the aspirin, they're still doing studies whether it helps or not. And I'm not trying to create misinformation, but I think there's a lot of frustration from a consumer, from my point of view, with that.
No, I understand. If you want to go down a conspiracy rabbit hole, one might look at the fact that prior to statins, it was generally accepted that cholesterol in a healthy human was 300. And that was normal for dozens of years. That's fine. 300. Once they be able to start testing it, 300, perfectly fine. Statins come out, and all of a sudden it's 200. So they're trying to get people on medication when their cholesterol is 300. Now it's 160 because they want to get more people on statins. So you can go down that route and say they're creating fear where there isn't fear to get people to go on a statin they don't need. But it doesn't mean that the product itself can't be helpful in certain situations. So I'm not that you're swimming in a part of the pool I don't necessarily always swim into. That. Mm-hmm. I was on a statin. I didn't need to be on a statin at all. But my doctor, you should get you on a statin. You're 40. Like, why? So I blindly took it, and I just went off it 6 months ago. I don't need it. I don't need a statin.
So it sounds like you're with me on this one.
But again, like, I don't make decisions based on what I've done. It's do you want to have the again, it shouldn't be a full-time job to figure out what's best for you prescription wise or supplement wise. I mean, the whole diet and exercise thing still holds true. On average, if you don't eat McDonald's every day, you'll probably live longer, right? That shouldn't be a thing we have to talk about. And yet McDonald's, people still eat there. And I'm not going the socioeconomic route at this point now, because McDonald's is more expensive than Subway. You can spend $20 on a Big Mac and fries now. Meanwhile, you can go to like a grocery store, get a thing of fruit and cheese for like $9. So this isn't me being elitist and ignorant to what reality is, but it's easier than ever at any socioeconomic level to make good choices. So this comes down to education, but I really believe that we're being sold a bill of goods on people aren't educated. People are educated.
Mm-hmm.
There's bell curves on everything.
Yeah, I think the whole patient education thing, health literacy is really, it's more, I really take offense to that. When I have conversations with people at the checkout line, as cashiers, it's amazing what they're doing, these people, for their health as a personal experience. And it's shocking. I'm blown away. They're doing the same thing that they're taking, they're working on their diet. They're doing keto or whatever these different things are, and they're sharing their experiences. And I'm like blown away. It's like, and that's what helps me get better, is those discussions offline. So anyway.
Yeah. So we are agreeing. We're not disagreeing.
So where do we want to go? I really want to highlight what you think we should be talking about here.
Okay, way to punt. I tend to like to remind people that we have been making progress. It's way too easy to be angry at the system today without appreciating how much worse it used to be. I was diagnosed in the 1990s with cancer, and back then everyone kind of died. And before then, they didn't even know you had cancer, or they didn't even tell you. They just told your family, they got the something, good luck. I'll plug a documentary I produced. I created an award-winning 8-part Spotify series called The Cancer Mavericks. And it's been listened to hundreds of thousands of times, and it's a history lesson. 50 years of advocacy in America that drove the problems away to create better problems. I encourage anyone listening to this to have a look. Just Google The Cancer Mavericks, and it's everywhere. The point of it is to look back and understand how hard it was just to get from A to B, because you can't drive until you have an engine, and you can't have an engine until you have fuel source, and you can't have fuel source till you know where the ore is in the mountains to make the engine. That's the level of appreciation I try to give people on. We have better problems to have today. So instead of just kind of dying of stuff immediately, we're now living with crap. And that's a better problem to have. Fighting for policy and legislation and bills and laws and state-based mandates and employer care and what survivorship meant and billing codes and dealing with HMOs and fighting the AIDS movement, the breast cancer wars. These are things that are, yes, systemic of major diseases, but the actions taken by those brave Americans that we've never heard of, upon whose shoulders we stand on and don't even know, paved the way for today's better problems. So that's what I like to explain to people. It's know your history. If you're complaining about healthcare today, is it more complicated? Absolutely. Is it better complicated? Absolutely. Are there too many choices? Absolutely. Is it in your interest anymore to get what's best for you? More than ever. Is the system more stacked against you? More than ever. This is the way I try to help empower people to realize that you can be a better consumer who happens to be a cancer patient. But looking back at what it took to get to here means you can do the same things in a different way that's corollary to 2024.
One of the most interesting things that I've learned recently is that depression is the highest disability rating, even over cancer. It seems like those who have cancer are more debilitated by depression as that factor. I found that fascinating.
Well, I mean, that seems pretty obvious. If you're told you're going to die, you're going to be depressed. This was a you know, being a Gen Xer raised in the 80s, it was kind of like just get over it, walk it off therapy. And there really was no recognition of the mental toll that disease took on you until the 1990s. And then even that didn't take effect into practice and policy and HR benefits and just general cultural consciousness till the late 2000s. And now everything's mental health for the right reasons, but mental health is now too big. It's everything. It can't be everything. There was a spectrum to everything. There's mildly depressed and stressed because someone at the supermarket yelled at you, or there's I might be dying and I don't know what to do with myself,
Mm-hmm.
or systemic childhood trauma. You can crack an egg a billion different ways under mental health. So the reason why people have it can be genetic, congenital, induced, latent, interstitial. I don't like to just cast over a large swath. Yes, are cancer patients more likely to be depressed? Yeah, so are parents who lose a baby to miscarriage. So, it's not an either or better or worse. They're all very different, but they have to be approached very uniquely as well.
Yeah, I was just meaning, just found it interesting with depression being the highest disability category, even over cancer as well. It's just crazy. And so I guess there's a lot of intersection with that. And then I think you really well appropriately responded, because now it's like we put that in it's a buffet of everything and anything. I mean, you can be, mental health, behavioral health, all these things that mean absolutely everything and nothing now. So I guess where I'm going is I would like to think that there's more commonality in trying to help people with well-being, but it seems like we lumped it in to do nothing, because there's a big difference between severe mental disorders and whatever, so I don't want to make light of that. So I think it would be helpful for you here today just to share a little more of your experience being a cancer survivor, and kind of at a granularity of that in healthcare. Your experience would be great.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was a concert pianist, born and raised in New York City. I went to undergraduate at Binghamton to be a film composer. And right before my graduate studies, I was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer at 20 years old and given 6 months to live. And man, did that take the wind out of my sails at the time. This was the 1990s. Bill Clinton was president. There was no internet. There was AOL dial-up. And we used the yellow pages and corded phones. That was society back then. And there was no concern to your mental well-being. No one seemed to care that I wasn't, 21. I was treated as if I was 80. There was very minimal emotion or concern for who I was as a person, as a pianist, as a college student. But sure enough, I went through the rigors. I had a massive brain surgery. I went through 3 months of very, very high dose radiation. I wound up turning chemo down, which was kind of radical back then to say no to chemo. But it turns out that speaking of quality of life and mental health and trying to be aware of what you need versus what they need, my uncle is a geneticist who knew that the chemo they wanted to give me contained two specific medications in it. One's called vincristine, one called cisplatin. Those are infamous platinum-based chemotherapy drugs that are still given today, 30 years later. And chemo has lots of side effects. People know that. It can make you mess with your brain. It can mess with your eyesight, your smell, your GI, your hearing. It could burn your skin. You lose your hair. Like it's bad stuff. It's a necessary means to an end. But back then, the that vincristine side effect was you get numbness in your fingers and toes, maybe for the rest of your life. I was a pianist that couldn't play anymore, and all I cared about, I'd like to play again one day. So what's the last thing that I want is neuropathy in my fingers and toes from chemotherapy. Did the doctors disclose that that was a side effect? They didn't tell me that. One other side effect was that the cisplatin drug has side effects that impair your hearing, anywhere from tinnitus to full on, full hearing loss in one or both ears are long-term side effects of these drugs. There's no prevention for that either. So I would have been like, I would have had hearing loss and neuropathy. What kind of life would I have had with those two side effects even if I lived 80 years? So my uncle advised me to say no to chemo because I would rather take the odds and die earlier, a pianist, than not take the odds, live longer, and never have that. So that's the conversation that I talk about today is you have to be your own advocate, which I think is a cat poster at this point now, because what's best for you may not be in the best interests of what's best for them, as much as I'm pro doctor. Mm-hmm. This is not throwing them under the bus. They're doing their jobs. They are practicing Hippocrates, but at the same time, they're under crushing mandates that they shouldn't be under to execute X, Y, and Z. So I became a cancer survivor on my last day of treatment when I said no to chemotherapy. I kind of suffered through the 1990s and my 20s with no friends, and I couldn't eat and infertile, impotent, no friend. It was terrible. I wound up getting a job in the advertising industry, just fixing shit with no friends and head down and just trying to live my life with no purpose, until I found someone who worked for Livestrong. Everyone who remembers the big Lance Armstrong yellow wristband phenomenon, I was thrown into that by accident. And that was the moment that I realized I could help the next me rhetorically know that your chemo will make you deaf and have numb fingers. I was lucky to have my uncle, the geneticist, but could I be someone's rhetorical uncle? And that to me was what advocacy meant back then. And this was, again, before we cared about your mental health. If you were younger, your fertility, you want to be a dad or a mom one day, you want to not be stigmatized in your job, you want to be dealing with stress and anxiety. It's hard enough being 18 when you're well. That was the conversation back then. So all of that experience informed where I've spent the last 20 plus years in the industry, which is mostly in nonprofit patient advocacy, medical communications, policy, health economics, digital health when that became a thing, peer-to-peer support, and content. So that's where I live and I land now today, from a perspective of that's my story. And I'm even keeled about it, as much as I was very angry about it. But I'm still traumatized. I've gone through all the therapy you could possibly need. It's the gift that keeps on giving. Do I still get scans? Yes. Does it freak me out? Of course it does. Everyone's going to live with some kind of trauma. No one gets out of life unscathed. The question is, how do you maintain a sense of connection to yourself that matters to you? And how do you go through hell and keep going? Is the cat poster, but it's true.
Well, that was really, I don't think we could get anything better than that.
Good night, Cleveland. Try the veal.
Um, so, do you see yourself at like Matthew 1.0, 2.0, 3.0 with your impact? I feel like that was like your mission, vision statement. Where are you?
I'm easily in the 40s right now. Version
For,
43, 44.
and this is not software upgrades, right?
I was a beta unit for a very long time.
All right. Well, I want to honor the time. I feel like you just did it. We got a few more minutes. I mean, what else is there to talk about now that you're, gosh, a version 4.30 or 43? I don't.
I mean, I'm not selling anything.
Yeah.
My aspiration, anyone that hears my voice, is to understand that it's okay to be angry, the right kind of angry. Permission to be pissed is something I wished I was given.
Mm-hmm.
And the opportunity to identify what advocacy meant to me should be something everyone should be given the empowerment to figure out for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because anger for anger's sake is a waste of energy and time. But anger for purpose is really important. And it's often too hard to take off the horse blinders of I alone can do this. Change is a team effort. And you have to drop your ego at the door to be a part of something bigger than yourself, to solve a problem you can't solve yourself. And that advocacy can often mean when you do it right, no one knows. So you have to be prepared to just be the unknown ant farm worker that gets shit done on the sidelines for no risk, no reward, no glamour, no award, no claim to fame. Anonymity has made this country better since its founding. So you can choose how you want to get busy living, whatever that means to you. If it's hug your kids every day a little more, if it's you shouldn't have to go through hell to gain an appreciation for life, but it's a rite of passage. And we're all chosen in a way to go through that. And if you haven't gone through that, then God bless you. But what is it? Yogi Berra said, if life were easy, we'd all do it. You know, that's what it is. Lumps and bumps, create who we are.
So is that acknowledgement of what, when you were 18 and 19, kind of that had to happen to make Matthew today?
Mm-hmm. We are all the cake in the oven based on the ingredients.
And what sort of, when you were going back and, when that happened, that moment, that diagnosis to today, can you share a little bit about your mindset, maybe books, faith, or kind of that mindset that helped, where you kind of got that sustenance to keep you to where you found that place?
The biggest advantage I had getting diagnosed at 21 was being 21. You're invincible, you're invulnerable, you're ignorant, you just don't believe. It's not like it's a different kind of denial. It's more like a, how dare this happen to me? Come on, I got a life to live, versus like this mortality thing. You have no immortality. Immortality is just genetically inside you until you're like 30. Like the immortality gene kind of wears off as you get older. So I wasn't in disbelief. I was like, oh, great, another stupid thing to deal with. So that invincibility and vulnerability came in very handy in hindsight. I was never scared. I was never scared. And I always saw it as a speed bump. I didn't ever feel threatened. Like, okay, I'll just go back to school. I'll be fine. No big deal. And it was that level of ignorance that I was just very, again, in hindsight, really happy to have, because I didn't really collapse. I never really cried. I never really had any sort of, I was more in awe. Like, holy shit, I'm getting brain cancer? That's freaking cool. Like, that was really, really where my mind was at. at that time in that age. So the books, you know, Dick and Jane Have Cancer were the books that were out there those days. You know, like right, how to cure yourself with this and this and this. There really was there was nothing back then.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, literally, Dick and Jane Have Cancer books were all the ones that were out there, and they didn't really speak to anyone. And it's like where did he touch you? Like, I don't want these books. That's not the kind of stuff that I need at 21 years old. Music, yeah, I just immersed myself in the music of the day. I was basing a lot of my creative stuff on some very, very famous film composers. I'll double down on hearing that music and just found a groove for myself. I was one of the first patients to bring a cassette deck into the radiation chamber to play music while I was being treated to mind the time. So that's how absolutely more like blithe, perhaps, that I was to my advantage. You know, it wasn't really until, you know, it didn't hit me until a few months later. But that's, you know, that was what my feel. That was where I was in the spring of 1996.
What was the darkest night?
Oh God. Ooh. I think there was one point during the radiation that it had gotten so bad that I was just in absolute agony. I couldn't sleep. I was throwing up all day, dry heaving. I couldn't drink water. Malnourished, dehydrated. Just, and I remember we went back the next day and we begged the doctors to stop. I'd rather die. I can't do this anymore. I think that was the darkest day. Of course, I said, no, we have to keep doing this. And it just got worse and worse and worse. But yeah, that was probably the darkest day.
Well, Matthew, it's been great having you on.
On a high note.
No, I really appreciate it. I really feel, you know, really fortunate to have you on, to be able to, you know, hear your story, to be able to share that and how you do that. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's been a pleasure to come on the show, Michael.
And until next time,